Welcome to Warhammer 40k 8th edition Battle Report 23, 2,000 points, Chaos Daemons of Nurgle versus Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch. Let's begin by taking a quick look around the board and at where the objectives have been placed. Beginning with this 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker has been placed towards the middle. In this middle 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker has been placed near this building. And finally, on this side of the board, on this 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker has been placed here, right next to a crater. Over on this side of the battlefield, in this 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker has been placed next to this crater. In the middle 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker has been placed up here next to this crater. And finally, in this 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker has been placed towards the middle, next to this crater. A reminder at the beginning of the game that the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will have 9 command points for the ensuing battle report, while the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will have 8 plus D3 command points available, thanks to the stratagem giving them the second Hellforged artifact. And so we will roll for their random D3, rolling a 1, so they will also have 9 command points for the ensuing battle report. Now we will roll for the random map deployment on which the armies will be playing, rolling a 6, which is Vanguard Strike. On a roll of a 1, 2, or 3, the middle line for the 2 halves will go from this corner up to that corner. And on a 4, 5, or 6, it will go from this corner to that corner. So here's that roll. Rolling a 5, which means the middle line for the battlefield will go from this corner on the right to the far left corner, which means, of course, that the deployment zone will be this corner in the bottom left and the top right. So on a roll of a 1, 2, or 3, Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will deploy in the bottom left, and of course then Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will deploy in the top right, and on a 4, 5, or 6, Nurgle will deploy in the top right, and Tzeentch will deploy in the bottom left. And so here's that roll, rolling a 3. So Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will deploy in the bottom left corner, and Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will deploy in the top right corner. Now on a roll of a 1, 2, or 3, Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will begin deploying first, and on a 4, 5, or 6, Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will begin deploying first. And that's a 5, so Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will begin deploying first. We will be back after the deployment. Both sides have now finished deploying. Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch began deploying first, and they also finished deploying first, which means they will go first unless the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle are able to successfully seize the initiative. Let's take a closer look at where each army deployed, beginning with the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch. So beginning with the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch deployment, going from left to right from Tzeentch's perspective, we have a squad of Screamers, Demon Prince of Tzeentch, squad of Screamers, squad of Pink Horrors, Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstab, squad of Pink Horrors, the Warlord, Kairos Fateweaver, Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe, and the final squad of Pink Horrors. Now taking a look at the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle deployment, going from left to right from Nurgle's perspective, we have a squad of Plague Bearers, the first Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings, the first squad of Plague Drones, Great Unclean One with Plague Flail and Doomsday Bell, the Warlord Rodigus, second Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings, second squad of Plague Drones, second squad of Plague Bearers, Great Unclean One with Doomsday Bell and Hellforged Artifact Corruption, and finally the third squad of Plague Bearers. A reminder that this is the chapter-approved Eternal War mission, Dominate and Destroy, and so there will be no tactical objective cards used in this game. Instead, each army will achieve 1 victory point per objective marker that they are holding at the end of each turn, and at the end of the game we will also tally up how many full units were destroyed by each side for additional victory points. So now the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will attempt to seize the initiative, and they are looking for a 6, and they fail by rolling a 5. So let's go into Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch, turn 1. Going into Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch, turn 1, a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch have 9 command points available, and the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle also have 9 command points available. Going into the movement phase, this squad of Screamers will begin by moving up to 16 inches in order to hold this objective marker next to the crater. This squad of 6 Screamers moved about 13 to 14 inches to end up within this crater, and they are very wobbly sitting in it. These front 2 Screamers are within 3 inches of the center of this objective marker, and so they are now holding it. This Demon Prince is now going to move up the board up to 12 inches. The Demon Prince of Tzeentch moved about 11.5 inches in order to move to here, to stay behind this squad of Screamers that already moved. Next, the second squad of 6 Screamers is going to move up to 16 inches to get closer to their other squad of Screamers. And the second squad of Screamers will finish its movement right here. This squad of Pink Horrors is now going to move up the board up to 6 inches in order to hold this objective marker. And they will finish their movement right here. And they are now within 3 inches of the center of this objective marker. This squad of Pink Horrors will remain still since they are already within 3 inches of the center of an objective marker. The Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstaff will remain still since he has a 30-inch smite. Kairos Fateweaver will also remain still since he has a 36-inch smite. The final squad of Pink Horrors is going to move 6 inches up the board in order to get closer to an objective marker within no man's land, and they will also declare an advance, adding 1 to their advance roll thanks to their instrument. And here's their advance roll. Rolling a 1, of course, which thanks to the instrument will give them a 2-inch advance, which will give them 8 inches of total movement. And they will finish their movement right here. The Iridescent Horror is just within 3 inches of the center of this objective marker. The Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe is now going to move up the board up to 12 inches, and he will finish his movement right here. Finally, the Demon Prince of Tzeentch in the back will also move up the board up to 12 inches, and he will finish his movement right here. Going into the Psychic phase for Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch, turn 1, because Tzeentch was very cautious in the previous movement phase, they only have a few psychic powers that they will be able to cast this turn, starting with Kairos Fateweaver, who will attempt to manifest Gaze of Fate. He will also attempt to manifest Boon of Change onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. And finally, Kairos Fateweaver will attempt to manifest Smite onto this squad of Plague Drones because they are the closest visible enemy unit, and they are within Kairos Fateweaver's smite range of 36 inches. And Kairos Fateweaver is over 24 inches away from any Chaos Demon of Nurgle models, which means there will be no Deny the Witch tests. So starting with Gaze of Fate, which will have a warp charge value of 6, and he gets it with a 12, so it will go off. Next will be Boon of Change onto the Lord of Change. And Boon of Change has a warp charge value of 7, and it goes off with a 10, thanks to the Psychic Test bonus. So now rolling a d3 on the table, and getting a 3, which is actually a 2 on the d3, which is Mystic Strength plus 1 Strength. So until the start of the next Chaos Demon of Tzeentch Psychic phase, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will have plus 1 Strength. And the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch would much rather have the plus 1 Toughness bonus instead of plus 1 Strength. And so they are going to use their 1 reroll thanks to Gaze of Fate in order to reroll that dice roll. So here's the reroll, and getting a 1, which becomes Extra Limb plus 1 attack. But that's still better than plus 1 Strength, because the Lord of Change can already have plus 1 Strength thanks to the Baleful Sword if he wishes. So instead of plus 1 Strength until the start of the next Chaos Demon of Tzeentch Psychic phase, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will have plus 1 attack. Finally, rolling for Smite, which has a warp charge value of 5, and it will go off with a 9. And the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are going to use 1 command point for a command reroll, going from 9 command points down to 8, in order to reroll the 2, in order to try to get a result that is 11 or more, in order for it to be d6 mortal wounds instead of d3. So here's the reroll. and getting an 11, which becomes a 13 thanks to the psychic test bonus, and so we'll go off doing d6 mortal wounds onto the plague drones. So here's the number of mortal wounds, and it will do 5 mortal wounds. So the plague drones will take 5 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and they pass 2, failing 3. And so the plague drone in the back that's up on the higher tier of the ruin will fall from 4 starting wounds down to 1 left. Next, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword has only 1 psychic power that he is able to cast this turn, and that will be Smite onto this squad of Plague Bearers because they are the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. But luckily for Nurgle, the Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings is within 24 inches, and therefore will be able to attempt to deny the witch if it is successful. Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and he gets it with a 10 thanks to a psychic test bonus. So the Chaos Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will attempt to deny the witch, looking for at least an 11, and fails with a 7, so it will go off. It will only do d3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. The Plague Bearers will take 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and they pass 1, failing 2. And so 2 regular Plague Bearers at the back will be removed. Finally, the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstaff will also attempt to manifest Smite onto this squad of Plague Drones, with one of the Plague Drones being down to 1 wound because they are the closest visible enemy unit and they are within 30 inches, which is what this Lord of Change's Smite power range is. Smite now has a warp charge value of 7, and it will go off with an 11 thanks to the +2 psychic test bonus from being a Lord of Change, but also a +1 thanks to the Everstaff. So that will go off with an 11, it cannot be denied, and therefore it will do d6 mortal wounds. And here's the dice roll for that. Rolling a 5, so it will do 5 mortal wounds. 5 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls from the Plague Drones, and they pass 2 but failing 3. And so the 1 injured Plague Drone will lose its final wound and be removed, and now this normal Plague Drone will fall from 4 starting wounds down to 2 left. The Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will then also attempt to manifest Flickering Flames onto this squad of Pink Horrors, even though they won't be in range to shoot anything this turn, but this way, if somehow they get charged, they will be able to add 1 to their wound rolls in Overwatch. And Flickering Flames has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets it with a 9, so it will go off. Going into the shooting phase, there are no units that are in range that are able to shoot. So now going into the assault phase, there is nothing within range that can charge. And so going into the fight phase, there is no one who charged and or was already locked in combat. So moving on to the morale phase. This squad of Plague Bearers lost 2 models this turn, and they have only a leadership of 7, and they are not within 6 inches of a greater demon. So therefore, they will have to take a morale check, and on a roll of a 6, they will lose 1 additional model. So here's their morale check roll, and rolling a 3, so they pass. No further models are removed. This squad of Plague Drones also lost 1 model this turn, and while they are within 6 inches of a greater demon, which makes it impossible for them to fail, they do have a demonic icon in the squad, and therefore if they rolled a 1, they would get the slain model back. And so here's their morale test roll, and they rolled the 1! So they get the slain Plague Drone back. And so the slain Plague Drone will be re-added to the unit right here off to the side within 2-inch coherency with the squad, and they are now back to full models within the unit. And so at the end of Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 1, the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are currently holding 4 objective markers, which means that at the end of Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 1, the score is 4 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch and 0 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle. Going into Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 1, a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Nurgle have 9 command points available, and the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch have 8 command points available. Going into the movement phase, we are going to start with this squad of Plague Bearers, which is going to move 5 inches up the board, and they will also declare an advance. And here's their advance roll, getting an additional 2 inches for 7 inches of total movement. And the Plague Bearers will finish their movement right here. Next, the Great Unclean One, armed with a Doomsday Bell and Corruption, is going to move up the board up to 7 inches, and he will also declare an advance. And here's his advance roll. Rolling a 6 for 13 inches of total movement. And the Great Unclean One will lumber on over the ruin in order to end up right here, just in front of the Plaguebearer squad and right next to the middle line. Next, this squad of Plague Drones is going to move up the board up to 10 inches, and they will also declare an advance. Thanks to their instrument, they will be able to add 1 to this advance roll, and they rolled a 4, which will become a 5-inch advance for 15 inches of total movement. And the Plague Drones will end up here with half the squad on the Nurgle side of the middle line and the other half of the squad on the Tzeentch side of the middle line. This Demon Prince of Nurgle is now going to move up the board up to 12 inches, and he will also declare an advance. And here's the Demon Prince's advance roll, getting 1 extra inch for 13 inches of total movement. And the Demon Prince of Nurgle will end up right here. This squad of Plague Bearers sitting on this objective marker will remain still. This squad of Plague Bearers, down to 8 models, is going to move 5 inches up the board, and they will also declare an advance. And here's their advance roll, getting an additional 6 inches for 11 inches of total movement. And they will all finish their movement right here. This squad of Plague Drones is now going to move up the board up to 10 inches. And the Plague Drones will end up right here, with the injured one being this one back here. The Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings, the second one, is now going to move up the board up to 12 inches, and he will also declare an advance. And here's the advance roll, getting an additional 3 inches for 15 inches of total movement. And the Demon Prince will end up right here. Now Rodigus is going to move up the board up 7 inches, and he will also declare an advance. And here's his advance roll, rolling 2 additional inches for 9 inches of total movement. And Rodigus will finish his movement right here. The Great Unclean One, armed with Doomsday Bell and Plague Flail, will now move up the board up to 7 inches and will also declare an advance. And here's the advance roll, getting 2 inches as well for 9 inches of total movement. And he will finish his movement right here. Going into the Psychic phase for Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 1, this Great Unclean One, the one that's armed with Corruption, is going to attempt to manifest Smite and Stream of Corruption onto this squad of Screamers, because they are the closest visible enemy unit, and at least the front guys are just within 7 inches, and the only Tzeentch unit within 24 inches who would be able to deny the witch is this Demon Prince in the back. So starting with Stream of Corruption, which has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets it with a 6. But the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use 1 command point for a command reroll, going from 9 down to 8 in order to reroll the 1, in order to make it more difficult to deny. So here's the reroll, and making it a 7 instead. So now the Demon Prince of Tzeentch needs to roll at least an 8 or higher in order to deny, and he rolls a 6. So he fails to deny, and it will go off. And it will cause D3 mortal wounds, and it will cause 3 mortal wounds. And so 1 Screamer will be removed, and a 2nd Screamer will drop to 1 wound. This one right here. And now for Smite, which has a warp charge value of 5, and he does get it with a 5. No more Deny the Witch tests from Tzeentch on this flank. And so we'll do another D3 mortal wounds, and what do you know? Another 3 mortal wounds. And so the 1 wounded Screamer will lose its final wound and be removed. And of course, when I pulled out the wounded Screamer, all 4 of the other Screamers fell over and lost their position. So I've tried to set them up as close as possible to the original position. I do apologize if they aren't exactly where they were before, but their little tails get intertwined with each other and the teeth and all that. And unfortunately, this crater has some very steep slopes on the inside, and it is very difficult for these models to hold their footing. So the wounded Screamer was removed, and now 1 healthy Screamer will be removed. And then they all fell over again. So once again, tried to reposition them, but these Screamers are probably nowhere near where they originally were. So if their positioning looks different, that's why, because they can't be bothered to stand up properly. Now this Demon Prince of Nurgle will also attempt to manifest Smite onto the wounded squad of Screamers, and I had measured before the Great Unclean One went, and the Screamers were the closest visible enemy unit to that Demon Prince, and in fact there were 3 or 4 models that were closer to the Demon Prince of Nurgle than the other squad of Screamers, and so I am still going to let the Demon Prince of Nurgle fire Smite into these Screamers because they all fell over and lost their positioning. While they are still pretty close to being the closest unit, we're going to give it to them. Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and he does get it with a 6. No Deny the Witch, so D3 mortal wounds. and it'll do another 3 mortal wounds. So 1 full screamer will be removed, and a second screamer will be reduced from 2 down to 1 wound. This one right here. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will now attempt to manifest Smite onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe. Smite now has a warp charge value of 7, and he does get it with a 7. Lord of Change will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for at least an 8, and he does get it with an 8, so it will be denied. This Great Unclean One with the Plate Flail will now attempt to manifest Smite onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword because he is the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 8, and he fails with a 6. Rodriguez will then finally attempt to manifest Miasma of Pestilence and Virulent Blessing onto this squad of Plague Drones. Starting with Virulent Blessing, which has a warp charge value of 7, and he fails with a 3. Now for Miasma of Pestilence, which has a warp charge value of 6, and he fails that with a 3. So going into this shooting phase, even though they advanced, this squad of Plague Drones will be able to fire their Death's Heads because they are assault weapons. They just have to subtract 1 from the hit rolls. And so these 3 right here in the front, the Sergeant, the Icon, and this one regular Plague Drone, are within 12-inch range to shoot this wounded squad of Screamers, while the Instrument and the 2 regular Plague Drones in the far back are within 12-inch range to shoot this squad of Screamers. So first, the 6 shots against the wounded squad, hitting on 5s, re-rolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince, and getting 2 hits, 3 definite misses, and 1 re-roll. And here's the re-roll. Still failing to hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 4s, re-rolling 1s, and getting 2 wounds, one of which will do double damage. So at Nurgle's request, rolling the single damage invulnerable save first, and it passes. And now the double damage, which of course will go through, but will only take off the 1 wound from the hurt Screamer. So the final wound from the Screamer is removed, and he is removed from the battlefield, leaving 1 very wobbly Screamer left. Now for the 6 shots against the fully healthy squad, hitting on 5s, re-rolling 1s, getting 1 hit, 2 re-rolls, 3 definite misses. And here's the 2 re-rolls, getting 1 more hit. Wounding on 4s, re-rolling 1s, and getting 1 wound. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. Finally, in the shooting phase, this squad of Plague Drones will fire their Death's Heads into the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. Only the 4 in front are within 12 inches. 8 shots total, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, getting 2 hits, 3 definite misses, and 3 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls. Still only getting 1 more hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, re-rolling 1s. Failing to get any wounds, but getting 2 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls. Still failing to wound, so doing absolutely nothing. Going into the assault phase for Chaos Demons of Nurgle, turn 1, this squad of Plague Drones is the only unit that is within range and didn't advance, and so they will declare a charge only onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. The closest model from the Plague Drone squad is about 6.5 inches away, so they will need a 6-inch charge in order to be successful. And they will get to add 1 inch thanks to their instrument. So here's their charge range. And the Plague Drones rolled a 10, which becomes an 11, so an 11-inch charge will definitely make it into combat. And so the Plague Drones all moved up and are now locked in combat with the Lord of Change. Everyone is either within an inch of the Lord of Change or within an inch of someone who's within an inch of the Lord of Change, so all 6 models will be locked in combat. They are, of course, making sure to stay over an inch away from those pink horrors. And the Demon Prince of Tzeentch, which is right behind the Lord of Change, will be unable to heroically intervene because of the pink horrors that are in the way. And that's the only charge, so let's go into the fight phase. First, we need to roll for Tzeentch's Locus of Trickery, rolling 2 dice, taking away the highest. So hit rolls of 1 will not count against Tzeentch models with the Locus of Trickery. Well, that's okay, they don't anyways. And so starting with the Plague Drones onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword, we have 7 attacks from their Plague Swords. Hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince. Getting 4 hits and 3 misses. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, re-rolling everything, and getting 2 6s. And here's the 2 re-rolls. Getting 1 additional 6. This means, of course, thanks to the Demon Prince being nearby, that they are 2 damage apiece instead of 1. 3 3-up invulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 1. And so the Lord of Change will fall from 16 starting wounds down to 14. Now for the 24 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis. Hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, and I will reroll the dice that is on top of the other dice, and it was a 5 underneath. So 13 hits, 3 rerolls, and the 1 reroll from the cocked dice, which still missed. And here's the rerolls from the 1s, getting 2 additional hits. So 15 hits total. Wounding on 5s, rerolling everything. Getting 5 wounds and 10 rerolls. Obtaining 3 additional wounds for 8 wounds total, 5 of which are an extra damage apiece. So 3 invulnerable saves against the 2 damage wounds, passing all of those, and 5 invulnerable saves against the 3 damage wounds, passing 3, failing 1, and 1 cocked dice. And here's the cocked dice, which passes. So only 3 damage taken. So the Lord of Change will drop from 14 wounds down to 11 left. And now the Lord of Change will get to strike back. Thanks to the Boon of Change, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will have 6 attack space instead of 5, and he will use all 6 attacks with the Staff of Tzeentch. Hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 5 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 6th hit. Strength 6 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s and getting 4 wounds. 4 5-up invulnerable saves, and passes 3 of them, failing 1. The Staff of Tzeentch is 3 damage apiece, so 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and fails all 3. However, the damage does not carry over because it's not a mortal wound, and therefore, 1 of the damage will be wasted because the wounded Plague Drone has 2 wounds left, so he will lose his final 2 wounds and be removed. So now going into the morale phase, this squad of Plague Drones lost a single model, but they have a leadership of 7, so it's impossible to fail. However, they do have an icon, and therefore on a roll of a 1, they will get the slain model back. And so here's their morale test roll, and they roll another 1, getting a second Plague Drone back in this game. And so the fallen Plague Drone's just going to go right back where it came from, which means this Plague Drone squad is now back up to full strength with no wounded models. The only other unit that needs to take a morale test is this squad of Screamers, which is now down to 1 model. And unfortunately for them, they only have a leadership of 7, and they lost 5 models, which will make it very easy for them to fail and lose their final model. And so because of that, Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to use 2 command points, going from 8 down to 6, in order to use the stratagem Insane Bravery. You can automatically pass a single morale test. This stratagem must be used before taking the test. So the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to use 2 command points in order to save that model, which will also mean that First Blood still hasn't happened, and because this is the mission Dominate and Destroy, that will not count as a kill point yet. And so at the end of Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 1, the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle hold just 1 objective marker, which means the score so far is 1 victory point for the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle and 4 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch. Going into Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 2, a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch have 6 command points available, and the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle have 8 command points available. Going into the movement phase for Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 2, this lone Screamer is going to move up a few inches up the board in order to take back control of that objective marker. And he will finish his movement right here. This squad of Screamers is now going to move up to 16 inches up the board, and they are going to move over this squad of Plague Drones in order to attempt to inflict mortal wounds with their slashing attack. And so the Screamers end up like so, with this model right here, and partially this one, these 2 in the back, partially moving over this model right here, which means they all get to roll a dice, and on a roll of a 6, it inflicts a mortal wound onto the Plague Drone squad. So rolling 6 dice, and no 6s, so no mortal wounds. Next, this Demon Prince of Tzeentch is now going to move up the board up to 12 inches. And the Demon Prince of Tzeentch will finish his movement here, just over an inch away from the Plague Drones, just like these Screamers. Next, this squad of Pink Horrors is going to move up to 6 inches over in this direction to get closer to the Plague Drones that the Screamers are surrounding in order to get a better shot on them. And so they are still within 3 inches of the center of that objective marker, but now they are all within 18 inches of this squad of plague drones. This squad of pink horrors will remain still. The Lord of Change with Baleful Sword is going to remain locked in combat with the plague drones. The Demon Prince of Tzeentch is going to move up the board up to 12 inches. And he will finish his movement right here. Next, this squad of pink horrors is going to move up the board up to 6 inches. And the pink horrors will finish their movement right around here. Kairos Fateweaver is now going to move up the board up to 12 inches. And Kairos Fateweaver will finish his movement right here, just over an inch away from these plague drones. Finally, this Lord of Change, with the Rod of Sorcery and the Everstaff, is going to move 12 inches over towards the pink horrors. And he will finish his movement right here. Going into the Psychic phase, for Chaos Demons of Tzeentch turn 2, we will begin with the Warlord, Kairos Fateweaver, who will attempt to manifest Gaze of Fate, Smite onto these plague drones, and Bolt of Change onto these plague drones. Starting with Gaze of Fate, which has a warp charge value of 6. And he gets it with a 6, thanks to a Psychic Test bonus. The nearby Demon Prince of Nurgle will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for at least a 7, and fails with a 5. So Gaze of Fate will go off. Now for Smite onto the Plague Drones, looking for a 5, and gets it with a 7. Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are going to use their Gaze of Fate reroll to reroll the 1 to try to get a higher Psychic Test. And here's the reroll, still just rolling a 1. So that was a waste of Gaze of Fate. But it will go off with a 7. However, Rodicus is now within 24 inches, and so he will use his first of his 2 Deny the Witch tests. Looking for at least an 8, and he gets it with a 9. So Smite is denied. And now for Bolt of Change onto the Plague Drones, looking for an 8, and he gets it with a 9. Rodicus will use his second Deny the Witch test, and ties with a 9, which means it will go off. D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and fails all 3 of them. And so this regular plague drone in the middle here will drop from 4 starting wounds down to 1 left. Next, this Demon Prince of Tzeentch will attempt to cast Smite onto the plague drones, because they are the closest visible enemy unit. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and he gets it with a 7. The regular Great Unclean One with Plague Flail is within 24 inches, and so he will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for at least an 8, and he fails with a 6. So Smite will go off, and it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and fails all 3 again. And so the plague drone that's down to 1 wound loses its final wound and is removed. And then this plague drone here will go from 4 starting wounds down to 2 left. Now the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will attempt to manifest Smite onto the plague drones, and he will also attempt to manifest Boon of Change onto himself. Starting with Smite, which now has a warp charge value of 7, and he does get it with a 7. And there are no more Nurgle units within 24 inches that can deny the Witch, so it will automatically go through. D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passing 1 of them. But that does mean that 2 will go through, and so the plague drone that's down to 2 wounds is removed from play. Now for Boon of Change onto himself, which has a warp charge value of 7, and it passes with an 11. No Deny the Witch, so rolling a D3 on the table, and once again, getting +1 strength, which is completely worthless against the plague drones, and so they are going to use a command point, going from 6 down to 5 in order to re-roll that. And here's the re-roll, getting a 6, which is +1 toughness, which will be very helpful against the strength 4 weapons of the plague drones. Next, this Demon Prince of Tzeentch will attempt to manifest Smite onto this squad of plague drones. If he is successful, this Great Unclean One is going to attempt to deny the Witch. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 8, and it fails with a 5, and he cannot reroll. Next, the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery is going to attempt to manifest Smite onto the same squad of plague drones, and then he will also attempt to manifest Flickering Flames onto this squad of pink horrors. And he is just over 24 inches away from any Nurgle models who still have Deny the Witch tests left, so his powers cannot be denied. Starting with Smite, which has a warp charge value of 9. And he fails with an 8 thanks to the +2 psychic test bonus from himself and the +1 from his Everstaff. So failing to get Smite off. Now for Flickering Flames, which has a warp charge value of 5, and he does get that with a 9. Next, this squad of pink horrors will be able to attempt to manifest Smite, going from this pink horror here, not that that actually matters, onto this squad of plague drones, and if they are successful, this Demon Prince of Nurgle is within 24 inches and therefore will be able to attempt to deny the witch. Pink horrors will only roll 1 dice looking for a 5 or 6, and they fail with a 3. Finally, this squad of pink horrors will attempt to manifest Smite, and it will come from the model with the icon because the Plaguebearer Sergeant is slightly closer to him than any of the plague drones. So they will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Plaguebearers, and there are no units nearby within 24 inches who can attempt to deny the witch. So looking for a 5 or 6, and failing with a 4. Moving on to the shooting phase, for Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 2, this squad of pink horrors are all within range of the Plaguebearer squad, and so they will fire all of their coruscating flames into the Plaguebearers. 20 shots hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s. Getting 10 hits, 6 rerolls, and 4 definite misses. And here's the rerolls. Wow, getting 5 more hits. 15 hits total. Strength 3 versus toughness 4 means wounding on 5s. And that was a good wound roll. Getting 7 wounds. 7, 5 up in vulnerable saves. Passing 3, failing 4. 4, 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passing 2 of those, failing 2. So 2 plague bearers at the back will be removed, leaving 6 models left alive in the squad. Finally, all 10 of these pink horrors are within 18-inch range for their coruscating flames of these who are not yet in close combat. 20 shots hitting on 4s, no rerolls. And that was a lot worse, getting 6 hits total. Strength 3 versus toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, but thanks to flickering flames, wounding on 4s. And getting 3 wounds. 3 5 up in vulnerable saves, passing 2, failing 1, and 1 5 up disgustingly resilient roll, which fails. And so 1 plague drone at the back will fall from 4 starting wounds down to 3. Going into the assault phase of Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 2, we have multiple charges to declare, first of which will be this Demon Prince of Tzeentch with wings declaring a charge onto the plague drones. This squad of screamers will declare a charge onto the plague drones. This Demon Prince will declare a charge onto these plague drones. Kairos Fateweaver will declare a charge onto these plague drones, and the pink horrors will declare a charge onto the plague bearers. And we will start with this Demon Prince charging into these plague drones, and they are already locked in combat, and he's just over an inch away, so he will automatically make it in. And the Demon Prince is now locked in combat with the plague drones. Next, Kairos Fateweaver will charge in. He is just over an inch away, about an inch and a half away, and the plague drones once again locked in combat, so no overwatch, so Kairos Fateweaver will automatically make it in. And Kairos Fateweaver is now locked in combat. Next, we will do the pink horrors onto the plague bearers. There is no overwatch, but they will have to roll for charge range. And they do have an instrument in the squad, so we will add 1 to this charge range. So rolling a 5, which means they will get 6 inches of charge. And so they will make it into combat like so, making sure to stay over 3 inches away from the Demon Prince so that he cannot heroically intervene. And while a couple at the back here are currently not in combat, after they get their 3-inch pile in, everyone should be in combat. Next, we will do the charge from the Demon Prince, which means he will soak up the overwatch from the plague drones. 12 shots, hitting on 6s, rerolling 1s, thanks to the Demon Prince of Nurgle. Getting 3 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, still failing to hit. Strength 4 versus toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, rerolling 1s. Getting 2 definite fails and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll. Still failing to wound. The Demon Prince is just over an inch away, so he will automatically make it into combat. And the Demon Prince is now locked in combat. Finally, the Screamers will charge in, and while they are just over an inch away, unfortunately, a couple of them are going to be charging through a crater, which means if they roll a double 1 for their charge roll, they will automatically fail. So we do actually have to roll for them. And here's their charge roll. Rolling 8 inches, more than enough. And every single screamer is now within an inch of a plague drone, so they are all locked in combat. So at the beginning of the fight phase, we have to roll for Tzeentch's Locus of Trickery, rolling 2 dice, taking away the highest, and so hit rolls of 2 will not count against the Tzeentch models within 6 inches of a model with Locus of Trickery, but I don't think there's any Nurgle units in combat this turn that can hit on 2s, so that won't be a problem. So the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch will begin by having this Chaos Demon Prince of Tzeentch fight first. 7 attacks from the Demon Prince onto the Plague Drones, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and getting 7 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s, and that's a lot of 2s, getting 3 wounds. 3 5-up and vulnerable saves, and they pass 2 of them. But these strikes are 2 damage apiece, so 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passing 1 of them. And so the wounded Plague Drone will fall from 3 wounds down to 2 left. And so now the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use the stratagem counteroffensive for 2 command points, which will bring them from 8 down to 6. This stratagem is used right after an enemy unit that charged is fought. Select one of your own eligible units and fight with it next. And the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will select their Plague Drone squad right here to fight next. These 4 Plague Drones over here, the Instrument, the Sergeant, and these 2 in the back, including the wounded one, are going to strike against the Screamers, whereas the Icon and the regular Plague Drone behind him will strike against the Demon Prince. Starting against the Screamers, 5 attacks with the Plague Swords, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting 1 hit, 2 definite misses, and 2 rerolls. And here's the rerolls. Getting 1 more hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 4s, rerolling. Getting 1 wound and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll. Still failing to wound. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which fails. And so the 1 Screamer on the end here will fall from 2 starting wounds down to 1 left. And now the 16 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting 10 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, which still fails to hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 4s, rerolling, getting 3 wounds and 7 rerolls. And here's the rerolls. Getting 5 more wounds, for 8 wounds total, with 5 of them being extra damage, but that doesn't matter against the Screamers, so we will roll them all together. 8 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 5, failing 3. And so the wounded Screamer will be killed off, and then 2 fully healthy Screamers will also be killed off, leaving 3 Screamers left alive in the squad. And now for the 2 Plague Drones against the Demon Prince, starting with Plague Swords, 2 attacks total, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, and failing to hit. Now 8 attacks with the Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, and getting 6 hits, no rerolls. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, rerolling, getting 2 wounds and 4 rerolls. And here's the rerolls. Still failing to wound. 2 4-up invulnerable saves, and passing both of them. And actually, the Demon Prince could take his 3-up armor. Either way, he passed both of them, so no damage taken. Now that the Plague Drones are finished, the 3 remaining Screamers will attack back onto the Plague Drones. 9 attacks with the Lamprey Bites, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting 6 hits, 2 rerolls, and 1 definite miss. And here's the 2 rerolls. Still rolling 1s. Strength 6 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s, and getting a solid 5 wounds. 5 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 3. And these attacks are 2 damage apiece, but that means they have to be done separately. So strike number 1, 2 5-up disgustingly resilient, and that will do 2 damage onto a Plague Drone. So that will remove the final 2 wounds from this wounded Plague Drone, and he will be removed from the battlefield. But because of that, the remaining Plague Drones all have 4 wounds, and since there's only 2 strikes left to resolve at 2 damage apiece, we can do that 4 damage together because we don't have to worry about whether or not the damage carries over. So 4 disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 2 and failing 2. And so this normal Plague Drone towards the middle will fall from 4 starting wounds down to 2. Next, the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are going to have this squad of pink horrors pile in and fight against the Plague Bearers. And so here's how they ended up, and now everyone is either within an inch of an enemy model or within an inch of someone who's within an inch, so that all 10 of them will be able to attack. 11 attacks total, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s. So getting 4 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 more hit. Strength 3 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 5s and getting 1 wound. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which passed. No damage taken. Next, Kairos Fateweaver will attack the Plague Drones. 5 attacks onto the Plague Drones with the Staff of Tomorrow, and he is within 6 inches of the Demon Prince, so hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s. Getting 3 hits, 1 definite miss, and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, which gets a 4th hit. Strength 8 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s, and only getting 2 wounds. 2 5-up invulnerable saves, and failing both of them. And they are d6 damage apiece, so this will have to be done separately. Strike number 1 will do 3 damage. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 1 and failing 2. And so the final regular Plague Drone here at the back will fall from 4 starting wounds down to 2. And then the second strike will do d6 damage as well, and that will do 3 damage as well. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passes 2 of them, only failing 1. So the injured Plague Drone will fall from 2 wounds down to 1 left. Now the Demon Prince of Tzeentch, which is the final charging unit, will attack the Plague Drones. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and getting 7 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s. Wow. And getting 7 wounds. 7 5-up invulnerable saves. Passing 3, failing 4. And they are 2 damage apiece, so they will have to be done separately. Strike number 1, 2 disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 1 and failing 1. And that will kill off the final wound from the injured regular Plague Drone, removing him from the battlefield. Strike numbers 2 and 3 can be done at the same time because the Plague Drones have 4 starting wounds. So 4 disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 2 and failing 2. And so that will knock the instrument right here from 4 starting wounds down to 2 left. And finally, strike number 4 with disgustingly resilient and fails both. And so that will remove the final 2 wounds from the instrument wielding Plague Drone, and he will be removed from the battlefield. So now all of the charging units have fought, and so we will go into units that were charged and or were already locked in combat, and there is only 1 unit from the Tzeentch army that still has to go, and that is the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe. Then any Chaos Demon of Nurgle units will be able to go after the Lord of Change. And the Lord of Change is going to use the Staff of Tzeentch in order to hit on 2s instead of 3s. So 5 attacks base with the Staff of Tzeentch onto the Plague Drones, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and getting 4 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 5th hit. Strength 6 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s and getting 4 wounds. 4 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 2. And they can all be rolled at the same time because the damage cannot carry over, and they do 3 damage apiece, which means that the first strike would not be able to finish off one of the models, and therefore the second strike would only go against the same model. So at the most, only 1 model will be killed off anyways. 5-up disgustingly resilient, passes 2 and fails 4. Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use 1 command point for a command reroll going from 6 down to 5 in order to reroll one of the failed disgustingly resilient rolls. And here's the reroll. And they still fail. And things are looking pretty bad for this Plague Drone squad because they are going to have to elect to kill off the Sergeant in order to keep the Icon alive. This will mean, of course, that there are no more Tzeentch models that are able to attack. However, the only units from Nurgle that can still attack in this fight phase is this Plague Drone and the squad of Plague Bearers that are being attacked by the Pink Horrors. So this Plague Drone with the Icon will go first. However, unfortunately for him, he is in base to base, attacks with the Lord of Change, and so he cannot pile in any further. And of course, he is just over 6 inches away from the Demon Prince, so no rerolls for him. One attack from the Plague Sword, hitting on a 4, and it hits. Wounding on a 5, and it wounds. 1 3-up and vulnerable save. All of this is going on the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword, by the way. Don't remember if I mentioned that or not, but since he's already lost some wounds, might as well keep going on him. But the invulnerable save passes. The 4 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s. And of course rolling double 1s, now that he's no longer within 6 inches of the Demon Prince. Getting 1 hit. Wounding on a 5, and fails to wound. But re-rolling thanks to itself, and still rolling a 4. So finally, these Plague Drones will pile in and fight against the Pink Horrors. And now all 6 of them are in combat, thanks to the Sergeant, 7 attacks total. 7 attacks with their Plague Swords, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s. Good thing too. Getting 3 hits, 2 definite misses, and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 additional hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 3 means wounding on 3s, re-rolling. Wow, and quadruple 5s, getting 4 wounds. 4 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 2, failing 1, and a cock dice. And re-rolling the cock dice, which still fails. And so 2 regular Pink Horrors will go down. So going into the morale phase, this squad of Pink Horrors lost 2 models, and this squad of Plague Bearers lost 2 models. However, the Pink Horrors are within 6 inches of a greater demon, and they also have an icon. So it is impossible for the Pink Horrors to fail, but on a 1 they will get D6 models back, whereas the Plague Bearers, since they lost 2 and only have a leadership of 7, on a roll of a 6 they will lose a model, otherwise they pass and nothing happens. So let's start with those Plague Bearers. Morale test for the Plague Bearers, anything but a 6, and they roll a 3, so they pass. The Pink Horrors cannot fail, but on a roll of a 1 they will get D6 models back, and they do not. So they simply pass. So this Plague Drone unit lost 5 models this turn, and they have a leadership of 7, and they are unfortunately not within 6 inches of a friendly greater demon, which means that if they take a morale test, they would need to roll a 1 or a 2 in order to pass. A 3 or higher would result in losing further models, and because there is only 1 model left within the squad, that would result in the squad dying, which would also result in first blood for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch. It would also mean that this objective marker right here, which is currently only being held by the Plague Drone with the demonic icon and the Demon Prince of Tzeentch, would no longer be contested and would be held purely by the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch. And so because of that, the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to elect to not take the chance to get a model back with the demonic icon, and instead they will pay 2 command points, so going from 5 down to 3 left, in order to use the stratagem Insane Bravery, so that they automatically pass their morale test. So the final Plague Drone in that squad will survive. Next, this squad of Plague Drones lost 1 model, which means it is impossible for them to fail since they have a natural leadership of 7, but they are also within 6 inches of a Great Unclean One, which means they can use this leadership of 10, but they will still roll since they have an icon as well, and therefore on a roll of a 1, they will get the model back. And so here's their morale test roll, rolling a 2, and so they pass, nothing happens. And so finally, within the morale phase on the Tzeentch side, the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch, for their Screamers, are going to use 2 command points, going from 5 down to 3, in order once again to use the stratagem Insane Bravery. You can automatically pass a single morale test. This stratagem must be used before taking the test, in order to keep those Screamers alive. Now they only lost 3, which means with their leadership of 7, they would have to roll a 5 or a 6 in order to lose more models. However, this way they can guarantee that all 3 Screamers in the squad stay alive, which will help bog down those Plague Drones potentially for another turn or 2, longer than if more models were killed off in this morale phase. And so at the end of Chaos Demons of Tzeentch turn 2, the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are currently holding 3 objective markers, thanks to the 4th one being contested by that lone Plague Drone, which means that the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch currently have a score of 7 victory points, and the Chaos Demons of Nurgle have 1 victory point. Going into Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 2, a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Nurgle have 3 command points left, And the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch also have 3 command points left. Also, at the beginning of the turn, I want to acknowledge a mistake that I made in the previous fight phase, and that is that I had forgotten that the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword had successfully gotten off Boon of Change for +1 toughness, and so the Plague Drone with the icon should have been wounding the Lord of Change on 6s, not 5s. Now luckily, the Lord of Change did not take any damage because he passed all of his invulnerable saves and or the Plague Drone failed to wound, but I do want to point out that I do realize that mistake and that through this turn he is still toughness 8. Not toughness 7. So going into the movement phase for Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 2, the first thing that we need to do is resolve reverberating summons for the Doomsday Bell from this Great Unclean One onto this squad of Plague Drones, as they are within range, and so on a roll of a 4-up, the slain Plague Drone will be returned to the unit. And so here's that dice roll, and rolling a 1, so the slain Plague Drone will not be returned this turn. This Plague Drone with the icon is now going to fall back out of combat, away from these 3 units here, over to about here, to better sit on this objective marker. And the Plague Drone is now over an inch away from any enemy models, and he is now sitting partially on the objective marker. This squad of Plague Bearers is going to remain locked in combat with the Pink Horrors. This Demon Prince of Nurgle is going to jump up the board up to 12 inches over into this area. And he will end up right here, just over an inch away from any enemy models, but slightly closer to the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. Next, this Great Unclean One is going to move up to 7 inches over towards Kairos Fateweaver and the Lord of Change. And he will finish his movement right here. Now Rodigus will move up the board up to 7 inches over in this direction. And he will finish his movement right here, making sure to stay just within 3 inches of the center of this objective marker. This squad of Plague Bearers will remain still. This squad of Plague Drones will remain locked in combat with the Demon Prince of Tzeentch and the Screamers. This Great Unclean One is going to move up to 7 inches to get closer to the Screamer to be just over an inch away. And he will finish his movement right here. This squad of Plague Bearers is going to move up the board up to 5 inches, and they will also declare an advance. And here's their advance roll. Rolling 2 inches for 7 inches of total movement. And they will all finish their movement right here. Finally, this Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings is going to jump up to 12 inches over into this area. And he will finish his movement right here, slightly closer to this Demon Prince of Tzeentch than the Screamer, but within 2 inches of both. Chaos Daemons of Nurgle are now going to use the stratagem Revolting Regeneration for 2 command points, which will bring them from 3 down to 1. Use this stratagem at the end of your movement phase. Select one of your Nurgle demon units. One model in the unit regains D3 lost wounds. If there are no wounded models in the unit, and that unit has suffered any casualties, a single slain model from the unit is returned to play with 1 wound remaining. And of course that will be this Plague Drone unit, and the Plague Drone with the icon is at full health, so a single slain Plague Drone will be returned to that unit. And so the Plague Drone Sergeant is returned right in here, which means of course that at this point there are 3 Nurgle units within 3 inches of the center of that objective marker, whereas there's only 1 Tzeentch unit within 3 inches of the center of that objective marker because Kairos Fateweaver is just over 3 inches away. So going into the Psychic phase for Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 2, we will begin this Demon Prince of Nurgle attempting to manifest Smite onto this Demon Prince of Tzeentch because it is the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. And Smite has a warp charge value of 5, and it goes off with a 7. Kairos Fateweaver is within 24 inches, and therefore will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for at least an 8. And he also rolls a 7, so the Deny the Witch fails. Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to use a command point for a command reroll, going from 3 down to 2 in order to reroll the 2. Looking for at least a 3, and still rolling a 2, so they fail to deny the Witch. And this will do D3 mortal wounds, and it'll do just 1 mortal wound. So the Demon Prince of Tzeentch will fall from 8 starting wounds down to 7. Now this Great Unclean One will attempt to manifest Smite onto this Lord of Change because it is the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. And Smite now has a warp charge value value of 6, and he fails with a 3. Rodriguez will now attempt to manifest Miasma of Pestilence and Virulent Blessing onto the Great Unclean One with the Plague Flail. Starting with Virulent Blessing, which has a warp charge value of 7, and he does get it with a 7. So if Tzeentch fails to deny this, according to Rodriguez's ability, Deluge of Nurgle, the closest visible enemy unit will suffer a mortal wound if this has been successfully manifested. So Kairos Fateweaver will attempt to deny the witch, and he fails with a 5. So Virulent Blessing will go off, and the closest visible enemy unit will suffer a mortal wound. And the closest enemy unit to Rodriguez is this squad of pink horrors, and so they will lose 1 model. Now for Miasma of Pestilence, which has a warp charge value of 6, and he passes that with an 8. And so if Tzeentch fails to deny, this will cause another mortal wound. Kairos Fateweaver will use his third and final Deny the Witch test, but he passes with an 11. So Miasma of Pestilence will not go off. So now this Demon Prince of Nurgle will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Demon Prince of Tzeentch, because he is the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 7, and he fails with the Perils. And so he will suffer D3 mortal wounds, and will suffer 3 of course, 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passes 1, failing 2. And so this Demon Prince of Nurgle will fall from 8 starting wounds down to 6. Now this Great Unclean One will attempt to manifest Stream of Corruption onto this Screamer. Stream of Corruption has a warp charge value of 5, and he passes with an 8. The Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery is within 24 inches, and so he will attempt to deny the witch, looking for at least a 9, and fails with an 8 as well. So it will go off. And it will cause D3 mortal wounds, and it will only cause 1 mortal wound. So the Screamer will fall from 2 starting wounds down to 1 left. And now the Great Unclean One will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Screamer. Smite now has a warp charge value of 8, and he fails with a 6. So first, the 2 shots from the Death's Heads against the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. Hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting a hit and a reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to hit. Wounding on a 5, and it wounds. 1 3-up armor save, which passes. And now the 2 shots against Kairos Fateweaver, getting 1 hit and 1 miss. Wounding on a 5, rerolling 1s thanks to itself, and here's the reroll, still failing to wound. Going into the assault phase, we have multiple charges to declare. This Great Unclean One will declare charge against the Screamer. This Demon Prince of Nurgle will declare charge against the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. This Demon Prince of Nurgle will declare a multi-charge against the Demon Prince of Tzeentch and the Pink Horrors. And this Great Unclean One will declare multi-charge against the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. We will begin with this Demon Prince of Nurgle and its multi-charge into the Pink Horrors and the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. They are both less than 2 inches away, and there is no crater for the Demon Prince of Nurgle to charge through, and there is no overwatch, so he will automatically make it into combat. The Demon Prince of Nurgle is now in base to base with both units and locked in combat. We will now roll for the charge range for this Great Unclean One against the Lord of Change and the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. The primary target will be the Lord of Change, because the Lord of Change is 8.5 inches away, while the Demon Prince of Tzeentch is 10.5 inches away. And so here's the charge distance, and rolling an 8-inch charge. So he will make it into combat with just the Lord of Change. And the Great Unclean One is now within an inch of the Lord of Change, and we will resolve his crushing bulk. Looking for a 4-up, and they get it. So 1 mortal wound onto the Lord of Change. This will drop the Lord of Change from 11 wounds down to 10. Next will be this Great Unclean One charging into the Screamer. He's just over an inch away and not charging through a crater, so he will automatically make it in. And the Great Unclean One has now successfully made it into base to base with the Screamer. And so now we will resolve this Great Unclean One's crushing bulk. And looking for a 4-up, and he gets it, causing a mortal wound. And this, of course, removes the final wound from the final Screamer from that squad, and that, of course, means with the removal of this Screamer, that First Blood has finally been achieved almost at the end of game turn 2. So finally, the Demon Prince of Nurgle will now charge into the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. He is just over an inch away, so he will automatically make it in. And he is now within an inch and locked in combat. Going into the fight phase, for Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 2, we first need to resolve Tzeentch's Locus of Trickery, rolling 2 dice, taking away the highest. So hit rolls of 2 will not count, and that will affect the Great Unclean Ones and the Demon Princes. Speaking of which, we will start with this Demon Prince of Nurgle first within the fight phase, and he will pile in and then fight against the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. And he moved about 3 inches over to the side, but also ending up closer to the base of the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. This way he will be closer to the rest of the Tzeentch army. If he survives this encounter, it'll be easier for him to go after other Tzeentch models, and now he will fight. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and all of them hit, except the 2 doesn't count, so getting 6 hits. Wounding on 3s, no rerolls, and getting 3 wounds. 3 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 1. So the Demon Prince of Tzeentch will fall from 8 wounds down to 6. Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are now going to use their final 2 command points, going from 2 down to 0, in order to use the stratagem counteroffensive. This stratagem is used right after an enemy unit that charged has fought. Select one of your own eligible units and fight with the next. The Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are going to select their other Demon Prince, who will fight against the Demon Prince of Nurgle over on this side. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 5 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 more hit, wounding on 3s, and getting 5 wounds. 5 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 3, and they are 2 damage apiece, so 6 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 3 and failing 3. So the Demon Prince of Nurgle will fall from 8 starting wounds down to 5. And so now the Demon Prince of Nurgle will strike back against the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 5 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 2 more hits for 7 hits total. Wounding on 3s, and getting 6 wounds, 2 of them being an extra damage. So starting with the 2 4-up invulnerable saves against the 3 damage wounds, and both of those failed, so that's 6 damage so far. And now the 4 2 damage wounds, and failing 3 of those, so that's another 6 damage. 12 damage total, which means that the Demon Prince of Tzeentch loses its final 7 wounds and is killed off. The Demon Prince of Nurgle cannot consolidate because he is still locked in combat with the Pink Horrors. And now the Great Unclean One will pile in and fight against the Lord of Change. So the Great Unclean One will have 5 attacks base with the Doomsday Bell, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 4 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 5th hit, but unfortunately the 2s don't count, so only getting 3 hits. Strength 8 versus Toughness 8 means wounding on 4s, but thanks to Virulent Blessing, getting to add 1 to wound rolls. So wounding on 3s, not that it mattered, getting a 5 and a 6. But that actually matters because the combination of Virulent Blessing and Locus of Virulence means we get to add 1 to both of those wound rolls, which means they are both wound rolls of 6 up, so they both get to add 1 damage apiece. But this one becomes a 7 up, which means we double the damage. So we have a wound roll of a 6 and a wound roll of a 7, effectively. So the invulnerable save against the 6, which passes, and the invulnerable save against the 7, which also passes. Did not matter. And now the Attendant's Claws and Teeth will do D6 additional attacks, doing just 2 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting a hit and a reroll, and here's the reroll. Getting 2 hits. Strength 2 versus Toughness 8 means wounding on 6s, but adding 1 to wound rolls, so wounding on 5s. And rerolling 1s thanks to himself, so here's the reroll. Still fails, but the 6 of course becomes a 7 and also adds 1 to the damage, so we get double damage and plus 1 damage to it. So if this gets past the invuln, it will do a grand total of 3 damage. So 1 3-up invulnerable save, which passes of course, so no damage taken. So now going into units that were already locked in combat and going back and forth between Nurgle and Tzeentch, we will start with this squad of Plague Drones. And these 4, including the Sergeant, will attack the Demon Prince, whereas the Instrument over on the side will attack the Screamers. So starting with the 1 against the Screamer, and starting with 1 Plague Sword, hitting on a 4, and it hits, wounding on a 4, and it wounds, and it gets a 6. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which fails, and because it was a 6, it does plus 1 damage, so it will do 2 damage instead of 1, which will kill off a Screamer on the end. And now for the 4 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, wow, and getting 3 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll. getting a 4th hit. Wounding on 4s, re-rolling, getting 2 wounds and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 additional wound. And because the Screamers only have 2 wounds and they start at 2 damage, the 6 will not matter in this instance. So 3 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 1. So 1 more Screamer will go down. And so now the 4 Plague Drones, including the Sergeant, against the Demon Prince, 5 Plague Swords to begin with, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting 2 hits, 2 definite misses, and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, which also hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, rerolling, getting 1 wound and 2 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, getting 1 additional wound, which also happens to be a 6. No AP, so 3-up armor against the 1 damage attack, which passes, and 3-up armor against the 2 damage attack, which also passes. 16 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting 9 hits and 2 rerolls and 5 definite misses. And here's the rerolls, getting 1 more hit for 10 hits total. Wounding on 5s, rerolling everything, and only getting 1 wound so far. And here's the rerolls, and that looks a little bit better. Getting 6 wounds total, with 4 of them being +1 damage. 2 3-up armor saves against the 2 damage attacks, and both of those go through, of course, so that's 4 damage so far. And 4 3-up armor saves against the 3 damage attacks, and failing 1 of those as well. So that's an extra 3 damage for 7 damage total. And that was very close for Nurgle, because the Demon Prince of Tzeentch had only 6 wounds left. So they finished him off, and the Demon Prince of Tzeentch is removed from play. So now the Pink Horrors will attack with 7 models, including the Iridescent Horror attacking the Plague Bearers, but 1 Pink Horror will have to attack the Demon Prince. So the 1 attack on the Demon Prince hitting on a 4, and it fails to hit. 8 attacks onto the Plague Bearers, hitting on 4s, and getting 4 hits. Wounding on 5s, and getting 2 wounds. 2 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 1. 1 5-up disgustingly resilient roll, which fails. So 1 Plague Bearer will go down. And now the 5 remaining models, including the Sergeant, will strike back against the Pink Horrors. 6 attacks, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting 2 hits, 2 definite misses, and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, still failing to hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 3 means wounding on 3s, rerolling everything, getting 1 wound and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, which causes an additional wound. 2 4-up invulnerable saves, and failing both of them. So 2 regular Pink Horrors will go down. Now the 1 lone Screamer will attack the Plague Drones. 3 attacks with the Lamprey Bites, hitting on 4s, rolling triple 3s, and failing all of them, no rerolls. And then finally, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will strike against the Great Unclean One. 5 attacks with the Baleful Sword onto the Great Unclean One, hitting on 3s, no rerolls, and getting 4 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, and getting 3 wounds. 3 5-up invulnerable saves, and fails all 3 of them. Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use their final command point, going from 1 down to 0 for a command reroll to reroll the 3. And here's the reroll. And they still fail, rolling the exact same thing again. So all 3 invulnerable saves fail. And they do d6 damage apiece, and that is 13 damage. 13 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 5, failing 8. So the Great Unclean One will fall from 18 starting wounds down to 10 left. Going into the morale phase, this squad of Plague Bearers lost 1 model this turn, and since they have leadership of 7, it's impossible to fail after only losing 1 model. However, they are also now within 6 inches of a greater friendly demon, which means they can use its leadership of 10, so either way, it would be impossible for them to fail. This squad of Pink Horrors lost 2 models this turn, and they have a leadership of 7. However, they are also still within 6 inches of a friendly greater demon, namely the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword, so they can use his leadership of 10, which means it's impossible to fail. But since they have an icon, they will roll, and if they roll 1, they get d6 slain models back. So here's the dice roll, And they roll a 1, of course. So they get D6 slain pink horrors back, and they get 1. And so this pink horror right here is returned to the unit. This squad of pink horrors lost 1 model this turn. However, they have leadership of 7, and they are also within 6 inches of this Lord of Change with the Rod of Sorcery, who has leadership of 10, so it's impossible for them to fail. Finally, this Screamer, his squad lost 2 models this turn, and he only has leadership of 7, which means he could fail after rolling a 6, and he is not within 6 inches of a friendly greater demon. So if they roll a 6, the final model is slain. And they roll a 3, so they're fine. And so at the end of Chaos Daemons of Nurgle, turn 2, the score currently sits, thanks to First Blood, 6 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle, and 7 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch. This is also because the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle are currently holding 4 objective markers. Going into Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch, turn 3, a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch have 0 command points available, and the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle also have 0 command points available. Going into the movement phase, this lone Screamer is going to fall back out of combat up to 16 inches. And the Screamer will fall back to here. Next, this squad of pink horrors is going to move in this direction up to 6 inches in order to move further away from the squad of 5 plague drones. And here's where they ended up. Now they are all nicely either on or in the crater to make it harder for them to be charged. Next, the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery is going to move back a few inches to be further away from the Demon Prince of Nurgle and the squad of 5 plague drones, but making sure to stay just within 18 inches of the Demon Prince for the purpose of psychic powers. And the Lord of Change will end up right here. This squad of pink horrors will remain still. This squad of pink horrors will remain locked in combat with the plague bearers. The Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe will remain locked in combat with the Great Unclean One. Finally, Kairos Fate Weaver is now going to jump up to 12 inches over to here. And Kairos will finish up here. He is now just over an inch away from the Demon Prince of Nurgle, and he is within 2 inches of the Plague Drone Sergeant. Going into the Psychic phase for Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch, turn 3, Kairos Fate Weaver will begin by attempting to manifest Gaze of Fate. Gaze of Fate has a warp charge value of 6, and he gets it with an 8. Thanks to his Psychic Test bonus. Demon Prince of Nurgle will attempt to deny the witch, and fails with a 3, so Gaze of Fate will go off. Next, Kairos Fate Weaver will attempt to manifest Infernal Gateway onto the Demon Prince of Nurgle, which means if it is successful, it will affect the Demon Prince of Nurgle, Kairos Fate Weaver, the Plague Drones, Great Unclean One, Pink Horrors, and Plague Bearers. Everyone except for the Lord of Change is within 3 inches of that Demon Prince. And it has a warp charge value of 8, and he fails by rolling a 5. So the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to use their 1 reroll thanks to Gaze of Fate in order to reroll the 1. And here's the reroll. Still rolling a 1, so Infernal Gateway will fail to go off. Finally, Kairos Fate Weaver will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Demon Prince. Smite has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets it with an 8. The Great Unclean One with the Plague Flail will attempt to deny the witch, looking for at least a 9, and he fails by rolling an 8. So it will go off and it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 1, and failing 2. So the Demon Prince of Nurgle will fall from 5 wounds down to 3 left. Next, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Great Unclean One, and he will attempt to manifest Boon of Change onto himself. Starting with Smite, which now has a warp charge value of 6, and he does pass with a 6. Rodigus is within 24 inches, and so he will attempt to deny the witch, looking for at least a 7, and he passes with a 10, so Smite will fail to go off. Now for Boon of Change onto himself, which has a warp charge value of 7, and he does pass with a 9. Rodigus will use his second and final Deny the Witch test, looking for at least a 10, and fails with a 4. So Boon of Change will go off, and now rolling a d3 on the table, rolling a 1, which is +1 attack. So until the start of the next Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch Psychic phase, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will have +1 attack. Now the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstaff will attempt to manifest Smite and Bolt of Change onto this Demon Prince of Nurgle. Starting with Smite, which now has a warp charge value of 7, and it goes off with a 13, and actually a 14 thanks to his Everstaff, so it's impossible to deny. And so it will do d6 mortal wounds, and it will do just 2 mortal wounds. 2 5-up Disgustingly Resilient rolls, passing 1 and failing 1. So the Demon Prince will fall from 6 wounds down to 5. And now for Bolt of Change, which has a warp charge value of 8, and that fails with a 7. This squad of pink horrors will now attempt to manifest Smite from the Iridescent Horror onto Rodigus. Rolling 1 dice and looking for a 5 or 6, and it goes off. But the nearby Demon Prince of Nurgle can attempt to deny the Witch, looking for at least a 6, and he does with a 10. Pink Horrors will fail to get off Smite. Finally, this squad of Pink Horrors will also attempt to manifest Smite from this Pink Horror in the back, so that it goes onto the Demon Prince of Nurgle. If this psychic test is successful, it will not be able to be denied, as there are no Nurgle units with Deny the Witch tests left that are within 24 inches. So looking for either a 5 or 6, and he also gets it, but it will only do 1 mortal wound because they have fewer than 10 pink horrors in the squad. So 1 5-up Disgustingly Resilient roll, which passes, so no damage taken. Going into the shooting phase for Chaos Demons of Tzeentch, turn 3, there's only 1 squad from the Tzeentch army that can shoot this turn, and that is this squad of pink horrors are all within 18 inches of Rodigus, so they will all shoot their coruscating flames at him. And there are 9 models in the pink horror squad. 18 shots hitting on 4s, no rerolls, with 1 cocked dice. Here's the cocked dice, and getting 7 hits. Strength 3 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 6s. All failed to wound. Going into the assault phase for Chaos Demons of Tzeentch, turn 3, there is only 1 charge to declare, which will be Kairos Fateweaver declaring a charge onto the Demon Prince of Nurgle. He will not declare multi-charge onto the Plague Drones, only charging the Demon Prince. And there's no Overwatch, so he will automatically make it in. And so now Kairos Fateweaver is locked in combat. Going into the fight phase, we have to resolve Tzeentch's Locus of Trickery, taking away the highest, so hit rolls of 3 will not count. So now we will resolve Kairos Fateweaver's attacks onto the Demon Prince of Nurgle. 5 attacks base with the Staff of Tomorrow, hitting on 3s, no rerolls, and getting 5 hits. Strength 8 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s, and getting 3 wounds. 3 5-up invulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 2, and they are d6 damage apiece, and that is 11 damage. 11 5-up Disgustingly Resilient rolls, passing 5, failing 6. And so that will kill off the final 3 wounds on the Demon Prince of Nurgle. And Kairos Fateweaver will not consolidate because he doesn't want to consolidate into combat with those Plague Drones. So now going into units that did not charge, going back and forth, we will begin with the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. Thanks to the +1 attack from Boon of Change, the Lord of Change will put all 6 of his attacks using the Baleful Sword onto the Great Unclean One. Hitting on 3s, because you have to subtract 1 from hit rolls, and that makes a huge difference. Getting only 2 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, and getting 1 wound. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which fails, and it will do d6 damage, and it will do 3 damage. 3 5-up Disgustingly Resilient rolls, passing 1 and failing 2. So the Great Unclean One will fall from 10 wounds down to 8. Now the Plague Bearers will strike against the Pink Horrors. 6 attacks, hitting on 4s, no rerolls, getting 3 hits. Wounding on 3s, rerolling, getting 2 wounds and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll. Getting another wound, which is a 6, but does not matter against the Pink Horrors because they only have 1 wound apiece. 3 4-up invulnerable saves, and passing all 3 of them. Now the Pink Horrors will strike back against the Plague Bearers. 8 attacks, hitting on 4s, no rerolls, getting 4 hits. Wounding on 5s, and failing to wound. So finally, the Great Unclean One will now strike back against the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe. Because the Great Unclean One is down to 8 wounds, he only has 4 attacks base now, hitting on 2s, no rerolls, getting 3 hits. He's also now down to a base strength of 6 instead of 7, but with the Doomsday Bell, he goes back up to a 7, so wounding on 4s. and still adding 1 thanks to Virulent Blessing. So actually wounding on 3s, which does mean, of course, that this 6 becomes a wound roll of a 7, which will do double damage. So the 1 3-up invulnerable save against the wound roll of a 7, which will pass, and the 2 3-up invulnerable saves against the 2 normal wounds, and both of those will pass. Going into the morale phase, there are no morale tests to take because the only model that was lost was a Demon Prince of Nurgle. Therefore, there are no squads that lost models but stayed alive, and so that's the end of the morale phase. And so at the end of Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 3, Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are currently holding 2 objective markers, which means they will have a score of 9 victory points, and the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will have a score of 6 victory points. Going into Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 3, a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle have 0 command points available, and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch also have 0 command points available. At the start of the turn, we need to resolve Reverberating Summons, and so this squad of Plague Drones will be able to roll thanks to this Great Unclean One with the Doomsday Bell. Looking for a 4-up, and they fail with a 3. This Plague Drone squad and this Plague Bearer squad will also be able to roll for Reverberating Summons thanks to this Great Unclean One. Starting with the Plague Drones rolling for a 4-up, and they fail, and now the Plague Bearers, and they also fail. Going into the movement phase, this squad of Plague Bearers will remain locked in combat with the Pink Horrors. This Great Unclean One will remain locked in combat with the Lord of Change. This squad of Plague Drones is going to reposition itself to be closer to the Pink Horrors, and they will finish their movement like so. Rodigus is now going to move up to 7 inches over in this direction, and he will also declare an advance. And here's his advance roll, getting 2 additional inches for 9 inches of total movement. And he will finish his movement right here. This squad of Plague Bearers will remain still. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings is going to move up the board up to 12 inches. And the Demon Prince of Nurgle will finish his movement here within 2 inches of this Screamer. Next, this squad of Plague Drones is going to move up the board up to 10 inches. And they will finish their movement right here. The Great Unclean One with Corruption is now going to move up the board up to 7 inches, and he will also declare an advance. And here's his advance roll, getting 1 additional inch for 8 inches of total movement. And he will finish his movement right here. This Plague Bearer squad is now going to move up the board, up 5 inches, to take control of this objective marker. And they will finish their movement right here. Going into the Psychic phase, this Demon Prince of Nurgle will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Screamer. And Smite has a Warp Charge value of 5, and he gets it with the 5. Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for at least a 6, and passes with the 14. So now this Great Unclean One will attempt to manifest Smite onto the same Screamer because it is the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. Smite now has a Warp Charge value of 6. And he fails with the 5. This Great Unclean One with the Plague Flail is going to attempt to manifest Smite and Stream of Corruption onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. Smite now has a Warp Charge value of 7, and he does get it with an 8. Kairos Fateweaver will attempt to deny the Witch, needing a 9, and fails with an 8 as well. So Smite will go off and will do D3 mortal wounds, and it'll do 3 mortal wounds. So the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will fall from 10 wounds down to 7. Now for Stream of Corruption, which has a Warp Charge value of 5, and he gets that with a 7. Kairos Fateweaver will use his second Deny the Witch test, needing an 8, and fails with a 7 as well. So this will do D3 mortal wounds, and it'll do another 3 mortal wounds. So the Lord of Change will fall from 7 wounds down to just 4 left. Rodigus will now attempt to manifest Fleshy Abundance onto the Great Unclean One, and he will also attempt to manifest Smite onto the Lord of Change. Smite now has a Warp Charge value of 8, and he fails with a 3. Fleshy Abundance has a Warp Charge value of 5, and he passes that with an 8. So Kairos Fateweaver will use his third and final Deny the Witch test, looking for at least a 9, and fails with another 7. And so Fleshy Abundance will go off, and that will add D3 wounds, and it will add 2 wounds back onto the Great Unclean One. So the Great Unclean One will go back from 8 wounds to 10. And because Rodriguez did pass Fleshy Abundance with a psychic test of 7 or more, his special rule, Deluge of Nurgle, means that the closest enemy unit takes a mortal wound, and that is the Lord of Change. So the Lord of Change will fall from 4 wounds down to 3. Going into the shooting phase, all 5 of these plague drones are going to shoot 1 lone screamer. 10 death head shots, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince. Getting 4 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the rerolls. Getting 1 more hit. Wounding on 4s, rerolling 1s. Wow, and getting 4 wounds and a reroll. And here's the reroll. Failing to wound. 2 of the wound rolls are 6s, and that could be important since the Screamer has 2 wounds. So the 2 4-up invulnerable saves against the 2 damage attacks, and passes both of those. And now the 4-up invulnerable save against the 1 damage attacks, and fails both of those, which will do 2 damage. And so this final Screamer is killed off. Now, these 2 plague drones are going to shoot their death's heads into Kairos Fateweaver. 4 shots, hitting on 4s, getting 2 hits. Wounding on 5s, rerolling 1s, getting a fail and a reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to wound. Finally, the Great Unclean One will shoot his Plague Flail into the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. 3 shots, hitting on 3s, getting 2 hits. Now that he's back up to 10 wounds, Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s and getting a wound. 1 3-up invulnerable save, which fails, and it does 2 damage. So the Lord of Change will fall from 3 wounds down to 1 left. Going into the assault phase, for Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 3, this squad of Plague Drones is going to declare charge onto the Lord of Change. These Plague Drones are going to declare charge onto the Pink Horrors. This Demon Prince of Nurgle will declare charge onto the Pink Horrors. And we will start with these 2 Plague Drones against this Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. There is no Overwatch, and so rolling their charge range, and they roll 7 inches. And so they will end up right here, locked in combat with the Lord of Change, and now the Plague Drones will charge into the Pink Horrors, and we will have Overwatch. 18 shots with the Coruscating Flames, hitting on 6s, and getting 2 hits out of 18 shots. Wounding on 5s, and failing to wound. Here's the charge roll for the Plague Drones, adding 1 thanks to their instrument, and they get a 4-inch charge. And going through the crater, that will fail, so they will not make it into combat. So finally, the Demon Prince will declare his charge, which means he has to suffer Overwatch. 18 shots, hitting on 6s, and once again, only getting 2 hits. Strength 3 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 6s, and failing to wound. And here's his charge distance, getting 7 inches. And the Demon Prince is just under 5 inches away, which means that even with the crater, the 7-inch charge will get him within an inch. And he will end up right here, so that he is over 3 inches away from the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, so that he cannot be heroically intervened against. And so let's start with this Demon Prince of Nurgle against the Pink Horrors. But first, we need to roll 2 dice to resolve the Locus of Trickery from Tzeentch, taking away the highest, so hit rolls of 1 will not count. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and getting 6 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, which causes a 7th hit. Strength 7 versus Toughness 3 means wounding on 2s, getting 5 wounds. 5 4-up invulnerable saves, and they pass all 5 of them. Next, we will resolve the 2 Plague Drones attacking the Lord of Change. Starting with 3 attacks from the Plague Swords, hitting on 4s and getting 1 hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on a 5, rerolling everything, and rerolling. Here's the reroll, failing to wound. 8 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s, getting 4 hits. Wounding on 5s, rerolling, and all fail to wound. And here's the rerolls, getting 2 wounds. And one of them is a 6, but that won't matter because the Lord of Change only has 1 wound left. So the Lord of Change needs to pass both 3-ups to survive, and he does. So now going into units that did not charge and going back and forth, starting with Nurgle, we will have the Great Unclean One attack first against the Lord of Change. 5 attacks with the Doomsday Bell, hitting on 2s, and getting 5 hits. Strength 8 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 3s, and getting 4 wounds. 4 3-up invulnerable saves, passing 3 and failing 1. And so of course this would kill the Lord of Change, but he will use his once per game reroll thanks to the Impossible Robe in order to reroll it. Now, if he re-rolls it and rolls another 1, he would be instantly slain regardless of how many wounds he had, but if he fails it either way, he would die thanks to the D3 damage. So re-rolling thanks to the Impossible Robe, and he passes with the 5, so the Lord of Change is still alive. So now the Pink Horrors will attack against the Plague Bearers. 8 attacks, hitting on 4s, getting 3 hits, wounding on 5s, and failing to wound. Now the Plague Bearers will strike back against the Pink Horrors. 6 attacks, hitting on 4s, and getting 5 hits, wounding on 3s, re-rolling, getting 4 wounds, and 1 re-roll. And here's the re-roll. Failing to wound still. 4 up and vulnerable saves, passing 3 and failing 1. And so 1 Pink Horror will go down. Now the Lord of Change will strike back against the Great Unclean One. Since he is down to 1 wound, he only has 3 attacks base, but +1 thanks to the Boon of Change. So 4 attacks with the Baleful Sword onto the Great Unclean One, hitting on 3s and getting 1 hit. No rerolls. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on a 4, and it fails to wound. And I just realized that I had forgotten to do the Great Unclean One's Attendance, Claws, and Teeth, so we will go back and do that a moment, because since the Lord of Change is down to 1 wound, that could be incredibly important, especially since he already used his one-time reroll. So, Attendance, Claws, and Teeth. D6 attacks will do 5 attacks. Hitting on 2s, getting 4 hits, wounding on 6s, re-rolling 1s, and rolling 2 6s. 2 3 up and vulnerable saves, and he passes both of them. So the Lord of Change still survives. Finally, the only unit left is this squad of Pink Horrors. So they will pile in, and then they will fight. And so after piling in, all but one of the models are now within an inch or within an inch of someone who's within an inch. And so that means 8 models, counting the Sergeant, will be able to fight. 9 attacks total thanks to the Iridescent Horror, hitting on 4s, and getting 3 hits, wounding on 6s, and all fail to wound. Going into the morale phase, this squad of Pink Horrors is the only unit that lost a model this turn, and while they only lost 1 and therefore it's impossible for them to fail, they do have an icon, and so on a roll of 1, they will get D6 slain models back. And so here's their morale test roll, and they roll a 2, so they pass, but nothing happens. And so at the end of Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 3, Chaos Daemons of Nurgle are currently holding 4 objective markers, which means they now have a score of 10 victory points, and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch have 9 victory points. Going into Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 4, a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch have 0 command points available, and the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle also have 0 command points available. And at this point, the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to concede the game. Thanks to this Demon Prince of Nurgle right here, Chaos Daemons of Nurgle do hold Linebreaker, and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch do not. And the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle have 4 kill points, while the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch only have 1. And so because of that, Chaos Daemons of Nurgle win a major victory thanks to a concession, with a final score of 15 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle and 10 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch. And I realize that the game is already over, but I can't ignore this. As I was editing, I realized that in Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 3, in the close combat between the Lord of Change and the Great Unclean One, when the Great Unclean One did absolutely nothing to the Lord of Change, I had completely forgotten to do his Attendance, Claws, and Teeth, and seeing now that the Lord of Change is only down to 1 wound, that could actually make a big difference and finish killing off the Lord of Change, which would help justify the concession from the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch. So we are going to go back and do that. We're going to resolve the Attendance, Claws, and Teeth against the Lord of Change, and if it kills him off, we will update the score, because apparently I forgot multiple times this game to do the Great Unclean One's Attendance, Claws, and Teeth, and that's not okay, because that could make a big difference, especially since within that turn he had Virulent Blessing, which gives him +1 to wound rolls. So we're going to go back and do that a second. So D6 attacks from the Attendance, Claws, and Teeth, getting just 1 attack, hitting on a 2, and it hits, wounding on a 5 thanks to Virulent Blessing, and it doesn't do anything. So never mind. And And so now that it's been announced that the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle have achieved a major victory thanks to a concession with a final victory point score of 15-10, I can go over one or two of my final thoughts on this game. First and foremost, of course, is the reason for the concession from the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch, especially since it was kind of close. However, it was very obvious that the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle were about to run away with the victory, as they have far more units that are currently holding objective markers, and there are multiple Tzeentch units which are about to be killed off. First and foremost, of course, is the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe, who is down to just one wound and has already used his once per game reroll. And so if he fails a single invulnerable save, which to be fair, he didn't fail very many this game, but if he fails one more, he's dead, and that's it. And that is a greater demon from the Tzeentch army that's lost, and that's a big deal. And of course, over on that flank, Rodigus is almost within charge range, and he will be within charge range the next time he moves. And so that flank is one player turn away from collapsing for Tzeentch. And of course, this squad of Plague Drones here in front of us, the squad that has 5 models, they are still, since they failed their charge, within 6 inches of the Great Unclean One with Doomsday Bell and Corruption, and therefore there's a chance that they could get a model back thanks to reverberating summons and go back up to full strength. But even if they don't, the combination of those Plague Drones and the Demon Prince should finish off that squad of Pink Horrors, which then collapses this flank. And that Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery is not built for close combat, and so he will not be able to take on the Demon Prince, Plague Drones, and Great Unclean One on his own. And so it's the combination of both flanks falling apart and too many Tzeentch models being on the verge of death within a turn or two that has caused them to need to concede the game. I have to say that this game started off really close, and it was a very tight war of attrition pretty much all the way through. Tzeentch had a much better strategy this game compared to the previous one, and so they didn't just get killed off within turn 1, which was nice to see. But at the same time, Nurgle was just too resilient for Tzeentch to be able to deal with in this game. The fact that the one squad of Plague Drones over by Kairos Fate Weaver and the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword survived is a huge deal. It denied first blood, and that squad was able to contest that objective marker and then later control it thanks to getting an extra model back from a stratagem. And because of that, that really helped break down that flank in Nurgle's favor. So it is unfortunate to concede when it is somewhat close, but I don't see Tzeentch being able to come back and take back the lead at this point. And so there's no point in playing it out. Because whether it's a concession at the beginning of turn 4 or the beginning of turn 5 or going all the way through to the end of the game, I still see Nurgle being the ultimate victor with how the game has turned out after these 3 game turns. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this battle report, and stay tuned for the next one.